Welcome to Powerful Women Rising, a podcast for female entrepreneurs ready to do business their way. Grab your coffee and join host Melissa Snow, business relationship strategist and founder of the Powerful Women Rising community, as she interviews industry experts and shares insights on strategy, marketing, mindset, and more. Here, you'll find the tools, strategies, and inspiration you need to feel empowered, take bold action in your business, and keep rising.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Powerful Women Rising podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Snow. I am so excited for today's episode. This is only the second time in 106 episodes that I have interviewed a man on the podcast. It is very rare that I welcome a man onto the Powerful Women Rising podcast because I like to support the women. And also, when I asked this lovely gentleman to be a guest on my podcast, and he said yes, I had a major fangirl episode. So I am really excited to share this interview with you. But before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about my monthly virtual speed networking events. Have you been to one yet? And if you haven't, why not? What is stopping you? Do you think that you're too new in business? Do you think, oh, I've been in business for so long, there's nothing that I could possibly get from this event? Do you think I really don't like networking? Every time I've tried it, it's been sleazy and salesy and weird and no thank you. Do you think that you're bad at networking? Do you think that virtual networking is terrible? If you have any of those thoughts, I don't blame you. I have had those same thoughts as well. And that is exactly why I started doing these events 2 years ago, because I tried so hard to find a networking event that I liked, whether it was virtual or in person. And I had a really hard time finding a balance between the cold, transactional, referral-based groups and the other groups that were really focused on connection, but it almost felt like you weren't even allowed to talk about your business without being a salesy weirdo. And I also tried a lot of virtual networking events that were super awkward and just not great. And so I started my own, and over the years, it has grown and grown and attracts some of the most incredible female entrepreneurs from all industries, all different experience levels, all over the world. And everybody shares support, wisdom, opportunities, resources, referrals, insights, advice. It is just so much fun. So if you have not checked it out yet, our next one is actually tomorrow, if you're listening to this the day that it comes out. These events happen on the first Tuesday of every month at 11 o'clock Mountain Time, and we've still got some tickets left. So pop over to the link on the show notes and grab yours. If you've never been before, you can use the promo code FIRSTTIME and attend at no cost. I am so excited to see you there. All right, let's dive into today's episode. I first met Alex Sanfillipo after he spoke at a conference that I attended, and I knew who he was before then. I actually kind of felt like, oh my gosh, they have like a celebrity speaker here because I had been following him for a while. I had been accessing many of his resources. I had been on his platform, PodMatch, and read a lot of the things that he had written, listened to his podcast for a long time. And so I was super excited to hear him speak. And what really blew me away about Alex was his willingness to share so much value for free. We have all heard those speakers, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour, where it's really just a veiled sales pitch and a roundabout commercial for their services. Alex is not like that. When he speaks on his podcast, on this interview, he is down to share all of the information that he has. He is happy to provide value, to provide insight, to share advice, to share what he's learned. And even if you never pay him $1, he's happy to help. And that is really rare to find, and it's made me a huge fan of his. So I am thrilled to introduce you to Alex so that you can be a huge fan of his as well. Alex Sanfillipo is a podcaster and the founder of PodMatch.com. This is a platform that automatically matches podcast hosts and guests for interviews. And side note, I set a goal for myself this year of being a guest on 15 podcasts. I have already been a guest on 13 podcasts, and it's only the beginning of Q2. And this is thanks in large part to PodMatch. So I just want to give a shout out to that service. Through PodMatch and his podcast titled Podcasting Made Simple, Alex helps independent podcasters grow their influence and revenue so they can better serve their listeners. Whether you are just getting started in podcasting, you're thinking about starting a podcast, you've been podcasting for a while now, or you have no interest in hosting a podcast, but you'd love to be a guest on one. This interview is going to give you so much insight and so many actionable tips that you can start using right away that are going to move the needle forward in your goals. Hello, Alex. Welcome to the Powerful Women Rising podcast.
Melissa, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, given what your podcast is and who it's for. Like, it seriously means so much to me. I really, really appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you as a guest. We've done, I think, over 90 episodes, and you're only the second man to be on the podcast. So
again, I'm honored. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yes, I'm super excited to talk to you today. So before we dive in, tell everybody a little bit about you and about what you do.
Yeah, sure. Again, my name is Alex Sanfillipo, and I've been a podcaster since 2014. It took me a minute. Those numbers start running together, right? So I've been in this space for a long time. I went full time with it in 2020 when I launched a software called PodMatch. And podmatch.com is, simply put, it's a service that connects podcast guests and hosts for interviews. And the whole idea is to kind of streamline the process for both sides of the puzzle while also bringing the right people together. For lack of a better term, it works similar to a dating app. I'm told, I've never used one, but I'm told it works similar to a dating app, but instead of connecting people for dates, it connects them for podcast interviews. And that was sort of my introduction to going from a hobbyist in the podcasting space to full time. And to this day, I mean, it is my passion. I feel like it's my purpose. I just love being in this space and giving back any chance I get.
Yeah, I actually don't know this answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you, when you started out podcasting, what was your podcast about?
My first one was like a faith-based podcast. So I happen to be a follower of Jesus. And so like I just kind of dove into my faith a little bit. The funny thing is it was a 15-minute episode one time per month. And I was literally talking into my iPhone. And at that, like going back to 2014, the iPhones weren't what they are now.
Yeah.
So like to give everyone a little thought here, but I just fell in love with the medium. Like I really enjoyed writing, but it gave me the opportunity to speak out what I was writing. And it just kind of flowed very naturally. But yeah, it was a monthly podcast. And that was kind of my introduction to the space.
That's awesome. I never knew that part of the story.
Yeah.
And so you have a podcast now also.
I do.
Podcasting Made Simple.
Correct.
Love that show. And I will give you a little plug for PodMatch because I had a goal this year to do 20 podcast interviews. And I just met with one of my business strategists that kind of like keeps me in line with my goals and like, where are we at with this and stuff. And she's like, you've already done 5. And I was like, I know. She's like, it's only January. I'm like, I know. PodMatch.
Oh, I love hearing that. That just makes my day to hear. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Your coach is going to think, though, they're going to start thinking that you're selling yourself short so you look like a hero, aren't they? They're going to make you increase your goals.
I know, exactly. Yeah, no, it's a great service. It's really, really great for people on both ends, people who are podcast guests and podcast hosts. So I want to talk to you today specifically about people who are podcast hosts. And I love podcast guesting. I think even if you have no desire to have your own podcast, being a podcast guest is an amazing way to grow your network, to get in front of other people's audiences, to maybe start taking yourself a little more seriously as an expert. I feel like there's a lot of times that I go on someone else's show and they ask me a question and I answer it. And I'm like, wow, did you hear that answer? That was really, I'm really good at this.
Right? Can I get a recording? Right?
Like so smart.
I have been there.
But I want to focus on people who have their own podcast or are considering starting a podcast. And I want to start first just by asking you why you are so passionate about podcasting. Like, what is it that you love about it?
Yeah, if I can go back to that early date of podcasting, I'll never forget this. Somebody emailed me that I didn't know. It was probably 6 months into doing that podcast in 2014. And they just talked about how impactful it was. And I don't bring that up to be like, oh, look at Alex, right? But I actually didn't know there was people all around the world that were listening. Like going back that time, the data and the analytics that we could see were even more fuzzy than they are now. They're still not great, but like they were really bad. And so I just really didn't realize. I kind of thought it was just for me sharing that. And I tried to make it valuable in case anyone ever heard it. But I kind of figured friends and family, and they'd just be like, great job, Alex, thumbs up, right? But somebody emailed me and told me that it was heavily impactful in making a really serious decision in their life. And it kind of changed things for them. And at that point, I was like, wait, there's something really special about this medium. And at that point, I'd also gone all in as a podcast listener as well. And a little bit of ADD and stuff like that. And I've always, even as a kid, my mom learned real quick, if she wanted me to focus on something, she'd throw Legos in front of me and she'd teach me while I was playing with Legos, because she's like, you learn better when you're doing something with your hands, it seems.
Yeah.
And so to this day, I just retain better through podcasting when I'm on a walk, when I'm in the gym, when I'm cleaning, anything that I might be doing, right? Like I just retain it better. And so for me, it's like, it's become a very intimate medium. You listen when there's no one else around, right? And you kind of listen, it's just you. There's something so powerful about it. And that's the reason I have become so passionate about podcasting, because I'm seeing the impact that it has on listeners' lives. And yes, I talked about my show being a faith-based show, but I know people that have comedy shows. And for some people who listen to that, that is the only laughter they're getting in their life right now, is these comedy shows. So I always tell people, don't sell yourself short on the category or the focus or the topic of your show. It can still really add a lot of value to people who get to listen to it. And for that reason, I'm like, I just believe that it is the most powerful form of media that we have right now when it comes to an intimate relationship with somebody who's listening.
I love that you say that about it being an intimate relationship, because I think before you start doing it, and sometimes for a while after you've started doing it, it feels very one-sided. Like I just got an email from somebody today, and I'm like you, like I still think 90 episodes later, my mom's the only one who's listening. And I get an email from somebody that I don't even know. And she's like, your podcast makes me laugh every time. And I'm like, okay, but this is not a comedy podcast, but she's like, I also love your content. She said something about like, I love how you ask like rhetorical questions that we can't actually answer. Like sometimes I'm like, hi, how is everybody? I'm like, no one can actually answer me, but
I like that. I don't mean to cut you off. I like that. And when I listen to the show, I remember the first episode of your show I listened to, I laughed almost immediately. And yeah, it's not supposed to be a comedy podcast, but I laugh because you bring your personality to it. And I immediately knew, I'm like, I like Melissa. Like I know we would hang out and we'd get along really well, right? Like,
yeah.
And I actually like the rhetorical stuff. Like you bring listeners into it. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I just think you do a really great job with this show.
Thank you. And I think that's part of how you create that intimate feeling is like, we've all listened to the podcast where people are just reading off of their script, right? Even the solo episodes, it's like, I wrote this ahead of time and now I'm going to read it to you. I'm like, you can just email it to me and I'll read it myself. I would actually probably enjoy that better. And so to be able to bring that part, and it's definitely practice. I think I'm much more myself in these interviews than I was in the beginning. I listened to some of my early interviews. I'm like, oh, girl, what were you doing there? But I think that's part of how you create that intimate relationship with your listeners, even though it is a one-sided conversation, is by not thinking of it as a one-sided conversation and really just showing up to it like you would a conversation with your friend.
Yeah, to me, again, I think that's what makes it powerful. People want to connect with humans. To your point, just email it to me. If it's going to sound robotic, if it's going to not feel human, people want to connect with the personality. I'll never forget, Melissa, the first time I discovered this was way later than you. I think I was over 100 episodes in, and it was during COVID. And I interviewed somebody, and I brought her on, and she's like, listen, Alex, the whole world shut down. I have a newborn baby. I have no help. She's going to cry while we're recording. And I was like, it's all right. We can edit out and post. Well, guess what, Melissa? I couldn't edit out and post. I mean, it was like through and through. I told my wife, I'm like, man, this podcast is just like it's so good, the content, so I'm going to post it, but I'm like nervous about it. I got more compliments, comments, messages, everything about that episode than anything else, because people said it felt so human. Oh, I'm right there too. My kid's at home crying. I couldn't even tell which kid it was anymore, right? Like, and so it was one of those things I was like, oh, wait, people like the humanity of it. And
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to bring that up really, really fast here, just because don't have this perfectionist mindset. If it's got to be the highest production value, highest quality, like, yes, have some pride in what you do, but don't forget your humanity in it. If we want to be perfect, we'll get a robot or an AI to do it at this point, right?
Yes.
People like the personality that you have. And I think that's part of the beautiful things of podcasting.
Totally agree. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I would have edited out in the early days. And now I'm just like, oh, and my dogs are barking and I live in a circus. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about starting a podcast, because you mentioned ADD, and I think that is very common among entrepreneurs. And even if we don't actually have ADD, I find that entrepreneurs are usually people who have like 100 great ideas a minute. And inevitably, one of those great ideas is I should start a podcast. And usually it's inspired by someone else who has a podcast that makes it look super easy, and they have like 10,000 downloads, and that is going to be great for us. So when people are asking themselves if they should launch their own podcast, what are some of the things that they should consider?
Yeah, the first thing is to think about is it actually is a commitment. And at this point, I named my podcast "Podcasting Made Simple" for a reason. I actually believe podcasting is simple, but it's not easy. Like the path has been laid out, but it's sticking with it that matters. And there are so many, I mean, literally millions of podcasts that have one episode. And it's not because it was supposed to be one episode, it's because people are like, oh, this was actually work. And I always say to that, like, what in life isn't work that's worth doing, right? It's going to take some effort. And so for me, step one is just to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, someone like Melissa might make it look really easy. But you know what? It's going to take a commitment. It's going to take some effort. And because of that, that foundational knowledge then has to be built upon. And I think the best place to start is to start with why. I know that's become a very popular term, right? Like start with why. But really, I think that you need to be able to have a deep purpose and meaning behind a podcast. The people that I meet that, oh, I started a podcast just to start one, they're typically gone pretty quick. And it's not because they're quitters or anything like that. They just realize like, oh, why am I doing this? This is painful. I'm out of here, right? And I always talk about why I use the word purpose. And if you go back to the original Greek, the word purpose actually means, or sorry, the word passion. So think about passion, so purpose and passion, but passion actually means suffering. And not that you're going to suffer, but I always like to tell people like, hey, listen, if you're passionate about this and you have a purpose behind it, you're going to be willing to say, you know what, I might have a late night or two to keep this going, but I know why I'm doing it. So I always tell people, again, acknowledge the work, but then immediately go make a why for it. Like, what is the real reason? And then the last thing I'll share on that point, Melissa, is to also create an avatar, which just means a fictitious ideal listener. So in your mind, who is it that's going to be listening to this show, and create a story for that person. It can be fictitious. For me, like I have an avatar I've been using since the beginning, and his name is Adam. I know how old Adam is. I know where he works. I know what he does because it ties directly back to my why, but it gives me like a person to think about. And so I asked myself, is Adam going to miss my episode tomorrow if I can't finish it? Yeah, he is. He relies on this. I know that. And so those things I think are the very first thing at the foundational level we need to do. And if someone who's hearing this says, I don't know if I have all that, then maybe give yourself the freedom not to start a podcast. Maybe start as a guest if you just want to explore it a little bit. But I think that we got to do this before we do anything else.
Yeah, that's great advice. I do think that podcast guesting is a good place to start because I think you can get a feel for what actually goes into it. Obviously, you're not going to see all of the behind the scenes, but you're at least going to get an idea of how it feels to show up and talk and talk and talk every week or every other week or whatever you want to do. I think something too that was important for me that got me to actually start the podcast. I had a podcast with my first business. I was a dating and relationship coach. I had a podcast called Love Starts Here, and I did about 85 episodes of that one. And when I was trying to decide if I wanted to have a podcast for this business, I wanted to I was only doing interviews, first of all, because that's what I like to do. And then I hired a podcast coach, and she was like, okay, stop doing only interviews. You got to do some solo episodes. Like, people want to hear you. And I was so caught up on this, like, I don't have 20, 30 minutes worth of stuff to talk about every week. How am I going to come up with 30 minutes worth of stuff to talk about all by myself? And then all of a sudden I was like, who said it had to be 30 minutes? Like, I don't know where I got this from. Like, sometimes I just show up and I talk for 7 minutes. Sometimes I show up and I think I'm going to talk for 7 minutes and I talk for 25 minutes. Like, you really can make it what you want to make it. And it doesn't have to be, I think sometimes too, we think it has to be about something that is going to be of interest to a ton of people, right? Were you the one that told me the story about the woman with the bird watching
Yes, that's me.
podcast?
Yeah. Share that, please.
I'll probably completely screw it up because I think I heard it like 5 years ago. But I remember you telling a story about a woman who wanted to start a podcast that was about like bird watching in the Western hemisphere, bird watching in the Midwest or something. And thinking like, there are not people like that is so specific that there's not going to be enough people out there that want to listen to it. But what she actually discovered, correct me if I'm telling this story somewhat wrong, is that it was so specific that the people who did want to know about that stuff found her podcast, and it was like exactly what they were looking for. And it actually had the opposite effect. She created this very loyal following and this very intimate community of people who were all interested in this specific thing. So it doesn't have to be a topic that is like, we're going to talk about skin because everyone has it, right? It can be And sometimes it's better if it's something very specific like that.
I think it almost always is. And you shared that story exactly right. And I've got a new one that I just recently heard. I met a guy and he sells insurance for truckers. And his podcast is an insurance for truckers podcast. And I knew that it was doing well without even talking to him. I'm like, as soon as he said, I'm like, I know this podcast is doing exceptionally well. And people are like, what, does anyone even listen to that? He's like, a few hundred people. I'm like, you're making high six figures if few hundred people are listening. He's like, yeah, I do. And
Yeah.
guess why? Because everyone who's looking for insurance as a trucker, they're on the road and they're listening to his podcast. I'm like, that's who I'm going to hire to get my next insurance. And
Right.
people are like, how are you making money doing that? I'm like, it's the power of the niche, right? Like actually really standing for something. And I think again, when you go back to that why and that avatar, everyone is really specific. There's something that they're really struggling with that you can help them with. Here's the thing. I actually like going to the gym and working out, but my podcast isn't about podcasting and working out because I know I can't really offer the best of me for you through that, right? I know that podcasting is where I can really, really help. So I just focus on that one thing. And I think many of us are like, well, I really like fitness, podcasting, sports, and this. So it's a fitness sports podcast about podcasting and getting fit, right? Like
Right.
we just go so broad that people can't even see themselves anymore because that's not the pain point that they would look to you to be able to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. So, one of the things that I've heard you say too is that it's important if you have a podcast to focus on spending time doing things that don't scale. What does that mean? And why is that your advice?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me this, Melissa. Thank you. I think this is a gift to be able to talk about. I know I've brought it up, but no one's ever asked me about it. So, I think that too many of us we look for the silver bullet to downloads, and people want that quick fix. Like, how do I make the next viral post on any of the social media platforms? Right? I know you and I both have a mutual love for Threads right now. It seems to be like a really, like you said, a positive place, and I like that. And so on Threads, like, how do I make that next big viral post that gets seen by tens of thousands of people so my podcast grows? And the reality is that happens for some of us sometimes. I should actually say for very few of us occasionally is what that will happen for. And so many people are holding on to that moment that they kind of do away with any sort of day-to-day rhythm to build their podcast. Instead, they just keep on saying, what can I do that's going to go viral so my show grows? And I'll share some stats here real quick. I'm actually going to pull these up on my screen. I'm not doing like a screen share or anything like that. So if you're hearing this, don't worry, you're not missing anything. But I just want to make sure I don't misspeak on them. And if anyone does want to see what I'm sharing, podmatch.com/report is where we do a monthly industry report. And I'm pulling this up for a specific reason. And here's why. If you have 28 people listening to your podcast in the first 7 days of a new episode. So first week, new episode comes out, 28 people listening, you're in the top half of all podcasts. If you want to be in the top 25% of all podcasts, it's 111 people listening that first 7 days. And so I'll just use that number as an example. Top 25 percentile, 111 days. When I say do things that don't scale, every day a suggestion I make to podcasters is to find somebody who's searching for your podcast but doesn't know it exists yet. Go to a website like Threads. And if someone's like, hey, I'm having trouble losing my baby weight. I just had my third kid, right? Join that conversation. Don't say episode alert. This is going to help you. Say, hey, listen, I was there once, or my guest was there once. Like I talked to someone. I think this would be really valuable for you. Would you mind if I share something with you that a conversation I had with somebody? Most people are going to say yes. And here's the thing. Now you built a fan. That person's going to listen to your podcast and probably going to stay with it because they're going to be like, you know what? The host reached out to me directly about this episode. They're going to really be appreciative. If you do that for 111 days straight or take weekends off, whatever it is, right? Puts you in the top 25 percentile of all podcasts. Not many people are willing to do that though. They hear me say that and they're like, oh, I'd rather just try for the viral post, right?
Right.
I don't know if those days ever come. And that's one of the things that I believe in doing, that it doesn't really scale, right? You can't do more than that, but every day go out there looking for the person that you most serve. Two things happen. Your show does grow, but two, you get better at understanding what the person you serve is actually looking for because you're putting yourself on the front lines of it. And that's how you actually make a better show over time as well.
That's brilliant. And that's why another one of many reasons you and I are going to be best friends, because that's one of the things that I talk about a lot when it comes to networking too. It's like, it's not that sexy to sell. Like networking is a long game. You're not going to show up to the networking event and meet 10 people and get their business cards. And now they're all your like best power partners and you're referring to each other and you're making all this money together and collaborate. Like it's not going to happen. And we love the online business coach that's like, for $5,000, I'll tell you how I made $9 million in 90 seconds. And like, of course that's appealing. Like, I've paid her $5,000. I want to know how to make $9 million in 90 seconds. And if I can make $9 million in 90 seconds versus this other lady that's like, I can teach you how to network and you can grow your business in 1 to 5 years. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with the 90-second lady. But I love what you're saying, because that really is the recipe for sustainable growth, right? It's like, I know several people who have gone viral, and then it's like, and and then what happened, right? But if you're doing it the way that you're talking about, you actually are networking, right? Because you're connecting with other humans, you're building those genuine relationships, you're providing value to people. That's what networking is. And that's how it's going to become sustainable and continue to like multiply on itself, as opposed to like overnight you got 100,000 views and then nothing else happened after that.
Yeah, I think I've never had that happen. And I think I'd actually find that pretty defeating if it couldn't be a repeatable process, right? If it just was every day for the rest of my life, great. But repeating that process, I think I'd feel like I've hit my prime and now I'm past it. And I don't
It's
know.
all downhill from here.
It's all downhill. I don't know if I just don't know if I would like that personally.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. So if somebody is working on their own, and I've done it both ways. I've had a podcast editor. I've been my own editor way more times than I've had a podcast editor. But what do you recommend for people who maybe are already in podcasting and it is feeling very overwhelming to keep up with coming up with episodes, editing their episodes, uploading their episodes, writing their show notes, doing all of the things without a team to help them?
Yeah, if a team's not an option and you're like, I've got to do this alone right now, I respect that. That was me for the first 5 years or maybe 4 years of my podcast, something like that. And it's a grind, but I'll tell you what, I respect those individuals who do it because they're the ones showing that like, hey, yes, this is simple, but it's not easy, but I'm sticking with it. And they're typically the ones that have some big purpose or passion behind their podcast or a combination. So I like that we're talking about this. And I think the first thing we have to look at is what I had to do. And it was this, I hit this point, Melissa, where I felt like I was looking at some of the greats in podcasting, seeing everything they do with their podcast. Their production value was top tier. Every social media post was top tier. Beautiful transcript, all these different things, right? Like every element you could ever imagine. And I was comparing myself to that. And the problem with doing that is it's us comparing our day one to someone else's year 20. If you scroll back to when some of these individuals got started and look at what they are doing, Amy Porterfield is a great example. I love Amy Porterfield. They do an incredible job. When I go back to how she started and look at it, it was just random posts with typos in it, right? Like, but I don't look at that. I look at where that individual is now. And so for us, I think we first and foremost need to give ourselves permission to not be perfect, to just say, this is the best I can do today at a high level, instead of spreading ourselves thin and just being okay at a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. The fact about podcasting is the only thing that's required to be a podcaster is to consistently release value adding episodes for your listeners to listen to. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to have a website. You don't have to have social media. You don't have to have any of that. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying the best thing you might be able to do is these three things. This is like the core of what I decided. Automate, delegate, eliminate. Automate. Is there any way that I can put this on autopilot where I can let my hosting provider schedule it? I happen to use Buzzsprout, and Buzzsprout allows me to schedule in advance. I don't have to go back and touch it once it's done, right? I was able to automate that process. Delegate. Is there any way I can move this on to a team member? Can a spouse help me? Is there anything I can do? And if both these things are no, and this is usually the right answer, is to eliminate. The example I'll give is Instagram is where I was wasting all of my time at that point. Instagram has never been my favorite platform, but I felt like I had to make these really high polished pictures of my guests with these like elaborate stories, and they were getting no traction at all. And I remember telling my wife, I'm like, what if we just stop? And she's like, I don't know. Will people still listen? I'm like, I don't know. So we stopped. And guess what? More people were listening to the podcast after that, weirdly enough, because I was focused in places that actually were moving the needle. And I freed up an hour of my time every week by doing that one thing. If you're podcasting by yourself, you have to make really hard decisions to do the things that move the needle most, not what you think you have to do because of everyone else that you've looked at.
Mm-hmm. Such good advice. Yeah, and I think we want to do all the things, especially when we see everyone else doing all of the things. And I like what you said too about like it really takes very little to get started. And I think that's true with so many things in entrepreneurship. And we get so in our head for so many reasons. We find great reasons to stall. Like, I can't do that because I don't have a website. And I can't do that because I don't have a call to action yet. And I don't have anything to sell them. And I don't have this. And you most of the time don't need any of the things that you think that you need. You just need to get started.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the more human you are in that process, the more people want to connect. I mean, listen, the powerful women rising community that you have is beautifully done at this point. I'm sure it started with you and a couple people just meeting and being like, wow, maybe we should open this up, right? It wasn't like, hold on now, don't tell anyone. We got to build out all this stuff first. Like, and I don't know the full story, Melissa, but I imagine at some point something organic happened that kind of sparked that. Instead of sitting back like so many of us saying, okay, these are the 35 things I have to have before I can press go. I think it's just better to be human, just go and say, you know what? Do you want to do this more regularly? How about
Yeah.
if I add an extra day to my podcast? Does everyone really like it? Let's try it and see what happens. I think being curious and just being willing to allow the journey to happen is where the real beauty and the real joy is actually found, and it's what resonates with other people.
Yeah. And that's really the only way that you make progress. I mean, I've told this story a couple times on the podcast, I think, but when I launched the Powerful Women Rising community, I did like a founding member launch. I had like 36 members, I think, and they all paid for 6 months in advance. And at the end of the 6 months, 3 of them signed on to continue. And I was like, something has happened. Why are 3 of 36 wanting to keep going? And I really had to, like, I took a couple months off just to kind of like regroup. I went through all their feedback. I figured out what was working, what wasn't working. Why did these 3 decide to stay? Why did the other 33 decide not to stay? And I almost completely revamped what was involved in the Powerful Women Rising community, what was part of the offering, what wasn't part of the offering anymore, and relaunched it in October, 10 months after I had done the founding member launch. And I like to share that story because I think, like you said, we compare our day 1 to other people's day 20. Like, I have a very successful membership community now, and I get people all the time that are like, teach me, how do I have a membership community? I'm like, you start one and it's terrible, and then you change some things. Like, that's just how you do it. And I think that's part of entrepreneurship that we probably don't talk about enough, but I think it's important.
I agree. And in podcasting, it's the same thing. Like the show that I thought I was creating when I launched, there was a show between my first one and the one I have now called Creating a Brand. And what I thought it was going to be was completely wrong. I mean, it was in entrepreneurship, so it wasn't completely wrong, but like I was way off. And I didn't know till I started it. And I think a lot of people want to say, oh, that was all waste of time. No, I would have never been able to hit the right target if I didn't know where it was. I
Right.
discovered it by getting started and trying something. The key, though, most of what you just said, it's the same thing with with podcasting. Talk to the people that you're serving. Find out why. I think a lot of people in that scenario where only 3 convert, they'd be like, okay, well, then I need 3,000 people in the next round so they'll convert more. And that's conventional wisdom. It's like, oh, no, you just need more then. But the better way to do that is to get on a call and say, why? Not because I want you to be there, but what could we do? What needs to change? And now, like you said, you have a very, like, it is thriving, the community that you built. The entire brand that you've built is incredible, but it's because you've talked to the people that it's for.
Right.
And you've learned what they actually want instead of just continuously guessing and trying to build more and more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you. I never do this with anyone, but I just decided that I'm going to
All
do it, and
right.
I don't even really know what I'm going to ask you. Okay, finish the sentence. The best thing about podcasting is,
Connection with listeners.
if there was one thing I could get podcast hosts to stop doing, it would be,
Long-winded intros.
that is hilarious because you and I both know Emily Aborn, and she recorded my intro. She's like the voice and everything. And she kept doing it. And I kept being like, it's too long, dude. It's too long. We got it to 30 seconds exactly, so that
That's
if anyone
amazing.
wants to push that 30-second button and just skip over it, they can do that. Okay. One thing that I wish more podcast hosts would do.
Focus on adding value instead of trying to sell.
Okay. Last one. If you are a guest on a podcast, please do not ever
leave leave something hidden in the background. Like, don't leave something and say, well, if you have to buy my book if you want to know about that. Like, don't do that. Lay it all on the table is what you should do. What you shouldn't do is try to hide something and tell people they need to follow you to learn more.
Yes. Okay. That was good. I'm glad I did that.
That was fun. Thank you. I've never done that before.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was tricky. And now when you're laying in bed at 3:00 this morning, tomorrow morning, you're gonna be like, you know what I should have said?
It's already gonna, as soon as it's not gonna be that long. It's gonna be in like 15 minutes from now and be like, you know what?
No, your answers were great. So, okay, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that people know the best ways to connect with you, the best ways to learn more about what you do. Obviously, if they are a podcast guest, they're a podcast host, they want to be a guest or a host, podmatch.com is the best place to go. You have a resource there that is, I think it's like 5 ideas to help you grow and improve your podcast or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's actually podmatch.com/free. And whether you're a guest host, aspiring guest or host, it'll give you some ideas very quickly. Don't want your email address or anything like that. That will help you know kind of your next right steps. And again, whether you're a podcaster now or want to be on either side of the mic, there'll be a different link for you to click. But it's podmatch.com/free has all that information.
Perfect. I will put that link in the show notes. I will link to your podcast in the show notes because it's great. And I would love everyone to listen to that. Definitely go to podmatch.com. And if you're interested in learning more about being a guest or being a host or being a better guest or host, if they want to connect with you personally, should they find you on Threads? Is that what we're doing these days?
Hey, listen, you can. That podmatch.com/free link has a way to connect with me as well, though. So really, any way you reach out, you're going to get me. I don't have any virtual assistants or anybody checking any of the frontline communication. I love to talk to people. So it's me. If you reach out on Threads or wherever you reach out, you're going to get me. And that's one of the things I really like to do.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for coming on the podcast. This was really, really good information. And I always love talking to you because you're my new bestie now.
Same, Melissa. I really appreciate it. Thank you again for having me. Truly an honor to be on this podcast. You've created something really incredible and special here.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of Powerful Women Rising. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you love the podcast, make sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, write a review, or buy us a coffee. Your support helps more women like you step into their power and grow their businesses in a way that feels real and true to them. Want to keep the party going? Check out the show notes for details on our next virtual speed networking event, or join us in the Powerful Women Rising community. Until next time, remember that building a business your way is the best way.